Welcome to the Arcane Journal for Warriors of Chaos. I'm joined by Chris, famously of the Dwellers Below. How are you doing, Chris?
Great, thanks. Good to be here from the Dwellers Below. The Dwellers Below, the Dwellers Below. I think that's my contractual obligation for cross-promotion and shout-outs.
The Dwellers Below. And in the box below, there'll be a link to the Dwellers Below channel. Do check them out. Do some great podcast stuff there. So
in the other box below, the information about Element Games.
Yes, all of that stuff. That one you can't even click, but there will be a link down below as well. And if we're doing promotion, you can become a member if you want to support me. You don't have to, but I'll like you more. So, moving on, we will talk about some actual Warhammer. I think just very quickly before we get into the new rules, let's have like a 2-minute just quick chat about how we feel the state of Chaos is at the moment. Because you've been playing Chaos at events, which is the main reason I reached out and thought you'd be a good person to talk to. How do you feel Chaos are right now before any additional rules?
I think they're pretty good. I'm also, and maybe I've hoodwinked you here, I've not been playing Chaos in the way that maybe most people have been. I'm yet to use the Chaos Lord on the Dragon, which is probably the big bad of the edition at the moment. So I think that's sort of the state of Chaos, is mostly a Lord on a Dragon and some support. Yeah. And if you're a bit more adventurous, you can cast lots of magic missiles at people. Those seem to be, to me, the big competitive draws to the faction at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more interesting to play the faction without the thing that's the obvious beat stick, because it's very easy to look at a Chaos Dragon and see that it's good. But it's looking at the sort of second tier, the stuff that isn't immediately obvious, that I think is more interesting, especially as we get more rules and you get other things to layer on top of. So
I think I'd agree for the coming journal. I would add the disclaimer that it's not especially clever to cast blue fire, fireball, pillar of fire, blue fire, pillar of fire, fireball, blue fire, pillar of fire. But it's fun.
You missed a fireball in there. There's another fireball as well.
Sometimes you roll the one.
That's true. Yeah, the double one, the dreaded double one. So, moving on, we'll actually talk about the new rules. So we're going to start off with the Wolves of the Sea. Now, this is the Marauder-focused attachment that we've received, and I'll say out of the two, this is the one that I'm quite excited by. I really like this. So, do you want to give us a quick run through on the restrictions for what you can take as the Army of Infamy?
Yeah, so quite similar at first glance to the Grand Army. You can have one Chaos Lord, Demon Prince, or Sorcerer Lord, and that's a really big shift because the Sorcerer Lord is in a separate pool in the Grand Army. You can have one Exalted Champion or Exalted Sorcerer for every 1,000 points, and an Aspiring Champion or Marauder Tribe Chieftain in any numbers. The Marauder Tribe Chieftain being one of the new ones.
Yeah, the Marauder... basically a Marauder aspiring champion, I think is the way to put it. So that seems a little limiting at first glance. You can't take a level 4 caster and also a Chaos Lord.
No, and so you're going to have to do some different things with the army building to the two builds we were just talking about beforehand.
There is actually a world that you can get a level 4 caster in there if we look at the special characters, but we'll get to that down the line as well. So then into core, which I think where it gets a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, so we've got Chaos Marauders, Marauder Horsemen, Marauder Tribe Berserkers, and Chaos Warhounds. The Berserkers, another new Marauder-style unit, but the really noticeable absences here being the Chaos Warriors, the Chaos Knights, and the Forsaken, which I think are probably the standouts from the Grand Army, not to be found. So you're going to have to be doing some different clever things in your Wolves of the Sea army to make up for that.
So the funny thing is, this is, and again, we'll get onto this a little down the line, this is the one army where I go, I actually do want a unit of Chaos Warriors in this list. Yes. And I have to take them in special instead of taking them in core, which is quite funny. But it's not as much of a downside, I think. So some interesting options there. And then into the special, you've got the stuff that you might not have seen, the Chaos Warriors, the Chaos Chariots, Skin Wolves, as we saw those incredible unpainted models, and then those horribly painted models. The Marauder Tribe Huskarls and Chaos Spawn as well. So that's just a 50%. And then into rare, we've got 33% of the army's points value can be spent on, which is always an interesting one when you get that much rare. And I think this is one of the factions where you might look at spending more rare than you would, because normally you just go max, your character allowance. But here, like, theoretically, you can't have a Chaos Lord or Dragon and a proper Sorcerer, so you might end up spending more points on rare, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's nicely set up for that, with the flip side as well, that if you want your particularly good special units with unit champions, which we'll, I guess, explain why a bit later on, that starts eating into points that would otherwise go into the rare slot. So it's going to be tricky to balance everything, which is fun when it's very easy to balance just taking a dragon.
Yeah, I love it when you've got lots of options where it's worth weighing them up, and you look at what you can take. So just to quickly blast through, you can take Chaos Ogres, Chaos Trolls, and Dragon Ogres. One of those is more exciting than the others. 0-1 gigantic Spawn of Chaos per 1,000 points, so 2 at 2,000. 1 Dragon Ogre Shaggoth per unit of Dragon Ogres, and also 1 Chaos Giant per 1,000 points there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the mercenaries, just the same ones that you can take in the Grand Army.
A little different, I think, because you can get Gore and Ungore herds here as mercenaries, whereas I think in the Grand Army there'd be allies, which for most people won't make too much of a difference. But when tournaments say you can't take allies, but you can take mercenaries, that might leave some doors open.
That is a good point. I'll be honest, I haven't played with either allies or mercenaries, so my eyes kind of glaze over when I get to that section. And then the stipulation, your BSB, you can't put it on an exalted champion in this, whereas you can normally in the Grand Army, but you can put it on an aspiring champion or a Marauder tribe chieftain. Standard upgrade other than that. Perfect. So let's have a look at what you actually get apart from some restrictions and new units. Special rules. Do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, so the first one is Favour of the Gods, leaning into the Gaze of the Gods table. If you have a character who kills their opponent in a challenge, you roll on the Gaze of the Gods table. And I think this is how it used to work back in 8th edition. We didn't get the rolling all the time, so you can really soup up your challenge-winning characters with lots of upgrades. In addition, if a unit captures a standard of the enemy as a trophy of war, then that unit gets to make a roll on the Gaze of the Gods table, changing references from this model to this unit. So again, potential for units to stack up a significant number of buffs if they are able to kill a unit champion and then run the unit down.
And most excitingly for me, as someone who's more likely to be facing the warriors than playing them, the chance for a unit to get stupidity and then be out of position and unable to do anything. I'm really looking forward to that happening to my opponents.
Yes, and maybe a slight... I don't know quite how the rules will work on this, but unit champions that can take the Favour of the Gods magic item to re-roll their Favour of the Gods roll, whether or not they'd be able to do that for a unit that's captured a standard or not.
I think so. I think I'd like to see it clarified, but my gut feel is yes, you would be able to, because it's it changes every wording of model to unit. The unit has the upgrade in it. I'd be okay with it, but yes, I'd like to see it clarified. It's a good point. It's a little unclear there.
So, like you said, possibility for stupidity is bad, but possibility for permanent bonuses to weapon skill, attacks, and strength, really good. And this is just across the army. Everything can potentially do this.
Yeah. No, I really like it. I think it's one of those where it's almost always right to roll. It's going to be very rarely that you roll and it bites you in the backside, especially if you've got some sort of 18-inch leadership aura of leadership 9 from a dragon. That'll probably cover a few things. You've also got Seaborn Raiders. Chaos Marauders and Marauder Horsemen within the Wolves of the Sea Army may have the Ambushes special rule for 1 point per model. Aspiring champions whose troop type is infantry or cavalry may also have the Ambushes special rule for 10 points per model. So this is something... I'm not a huge fan of ambushes in general, but this army lets you take lots of very cheap units, which is where ambushes, I think, becomes a lot more exciting, because if something doesn't come on until turn 4, you're like, oh no, 50 points of my army is still off the board. Whatever will I do? So yeah. I think, yeah.
And I think if you don't need the ambushes, you can deploy them as normal. And so you're maybe down 5 or 10 points, but you have the option of ambushing them when it's helpful.
Yeah, and that's also really interesting is you go for the first turn, getting the bonus for first turn. Although in this army, I guess that's not super relevant. As I start saying something that is completely irrelevant. Do you want to tell us about Warrior's Duel?
Yeah, this is a really interesting and maybe exciting mechanic. Instead of rolling off to decide who gets the first turn, you can challenge your opponent to a Warrior's Duel, which is not a challenge. If your opponent accepts, you each choose a single unit champion with wounds of 1, whose troop type is infantry or cavalry, to fight the warrior's duel that is not a challenge. They then fight as if engaged in a challenge, but it's not a challenge for the purposes of various special rules, until otherwise clarified, to find out who is the winner. And once the victor has been determined, the winner of the challenge, the duel, gets the first turn. No need to roll a dice.
Yeah, key to note as well, if you're challenging Bretonnians, if they decline, they not only go second, but they don't get to pray. But if they accept, they get to pray. And if they win, they go first as well. So there is a potential to actually bite yourself in the backside a little bit with this rule. So you were really stressing that it's not a challenge. I think the way I would read this personally, and again, it's a rule that I'd love to have clarified just to be really clear, because it's saying they're fighting as if engaged in a challenge. I would argue that means any rules that affect you in a challenge apply, because you're fighting as if you're engaged in a challenge.
Yeah,
However,
I was thinking more along the lines of the Bretonnian interactions, which, as you've said, is actually clarified more clearly elsewhere. So I think,
sure.
I think I have misled you
there. No, I think it's a good point, because I think it might need clarifying. But I think I would err on the side of, until we hear otherwise, rules that apply in the challenge apply here. So that's the special rules that we get. How do you feel about it to start off with? Do you think this is how do you feel about the whole package from what we've seen so far?
To me, it feels like this is, I think, Arcane Journals or Armies of Infantry kind of done right, where you have some additional restrictions on the normal list that leads you in a particular thematic way, and you get some bonuses as a result of that, but none of them are... none of these seem to me to be especially game-breaking or game-deciding. They're helpful, and you can build around them, but they're not... it's not as big a shift as with something like the reroll regeneration saves in a Troll Horde.
Yeah, no, that is true. I think this is incredible. I think the ability to go first is... because you know that you're going to be fighting a duel. You're going to bring a chilled up unit champion. So you're going to be at the advantage. And if you look at your opponent and go, oh, somehow they're going to beat me, I think on odds I lose this one. You just don't do the challenge, and then you take the roll off and hope that you get the advantage. So have you had much thought about tooling up a unit champion specifically for this? Is that something you've thought about?
I think it's something that you might want to lean into, especially if you've built the rest of the army to capitalize on getting first turn. So having lots of fast units that really want to just lunge at the opponent, and maybe with a particularly aggressive character loadout, maybe a dragon, that becomes like really appealing. You can take a Warriors of Chaos champion with a Mark of Chaos and 25 points of magic items. So probably one of the stronger unit champions going around to really lean into this. But then you have to take a unit of Chaos Warriors in your army that's trying to be really quick and fast. So it doesn't fit in quite as neatly there.
So I'm glad you mentioned Chaos Warriors, because I have been thinking about this. I think if I'm writing a Warriors of a Wolves of the Sea list, I'm going to spend 111 points. And that is 5 Warriors of Chaos with halberds, Mark of Slanesh, so in the first round of combat, they get +1 initiative. That means that you're going to have 2 attacks, hitting at strength 5, weapon skill 5, AP 1, all the good stuff there. You've also got 25 points, so I'm going to put a Paymaster's coin on there, because goddamn, I'm going to win this combat. I'm going to hit before you. I'm going to hit with everything, hopefully. I'm strength 5, so I'm going to be wounding you realistically on 3s or 4s. I don't think there's any T5 unit champions in the game that I can think of. No, I don't think there is.
Not with only one wound that spring to mind.
There's going to be one. Let us know in the comment what we're wrong about. There's always one that people tell me that I'm wrong about. But yeah, I think that's just like a really strong setup for getting that consistent turn 1. I don't think there's many things that you're going to lose into. And worst comes to worst, like, I guess elves with initiative 6.
Yeah, like a Swordmaster champion.
Yeah. But then you just don't make the challenge. I think, most of the time this is going to get you there. And 111 points is relatively cheap, especially, and we'll see when we get to your list. You might want to play a more MSU sort of style with this army. And while it's not the fastest, it's just another set of 5 bodies.
Yes, although you do need to get some use out of it. Otherwise, you're sort of playing with 1900 points, but probably getting the first turn, which is good and maybe worth it. But it's I think we were saying before, there's a balance, or there's like a push and pull with the list
Yeah.
that is, yeah, really interesting from a list writing point of view.
I think if I had the option to spend 100 points or 110 points to go first every game, I would pay that with an aggressive list. Because so many times you're going to come up against someone who's got, incidental firepower, a couple of grudge throwers, a couple of cannons, something along those lines that just threatens whatever big threat you want to put out. Whether it's, a dragon or a chariot or something like that, and you want to try and nullify it as early as possible. I think just making sure that you only get shot by that once as you close the distance, instead of getting shot by it turn one and then turn two as well. I think I would pay those points.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. But on the flip side, it does give you some vulnerabilities or some points people can pick up if they're able to zone out the dragon. It just sounds interesting to me. Like there's things both players are trying to do as a result of that.
Yes.
And that is, I think, what we are hoping to get out of these kind of journals.
Yeah. I'm also, when I'm playing non-chaos armies, I'm going to not necessarily tool up unit champions, but it is going to factor into my thinking where I'm like, do I take a champion here where I might not necessarily I like units of cavalry without champions normally, because then you can't get challenged out. Now I might start putting them in just so I have the option. Because here's the thing, if you don't have a 1 wound unit champion, you just lose the duel. You just too bad, so sad, ogre players, unless you brought, I guess, a Noblar who's going to lose anyway.
Yeah, I suppose, which is unfortunate, but thankfully something will keep the ogres from dominating the meta like they have been.
Absolutely, far too strong, those ogre players. One last point to touch on before we move on. It doesn't actually clarify, because this is before deployment, so is that model just dead? I'm assuming that the model that loses combat is dead. But it's
then does the
clear.
champion then get to roll on the Gaze of the Gods type? No, that's just characters.
It is characters, yeah. No, that would be incredible. You just start with a roll on the table just to give you stupidity on turn.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be good. Cool. So that's the Wolves of the Sea. That's the one I'm really excited about. And now we're going to move on to the Heralds of Darkness. Now, I will say, before we start, I am underwhelmed by Heralds of Darkness. I think there are too many restrictions. I'm not going to labour that point. We're going to talk about the rules as they are, and when the limitations come up, we can talk about that. But I don't think there's any point going, oh, it's terrible just the entire way through. So we'll talk about the good with it as well. So character-wise, this is looking a lot closer to what you can take in the Grand Army. Do you want to run us through on the characters?
Yep, it's 0-1 Chaos Lords or Demon Princes. Then you get 0-1 Exalted Champions or Sorcerer Lords per 1,000 points, and any number of Aspiring Champions and Exalted Sorcerers, exactly the same as, I believe, as the Grand Army.
It's so much closer. It's the same.
But
yes,
we diverge from that in the next line of the core.
You do. 33% of your points have to be spent on core. I'm not excited about that. That is, that's a problem.
Especially when your core is consisting of the options that we've got here, which is 1 plus unit of Chaos Knights.
Yep.
Marauder Horsemen and Hounds in any numbers, and 0-1 Chaos Chariots.
Yeah, so on the face of it, I don't hate that too much, because I quite like Chaos Knights and I like Marauder Horsemen with the Mark of Khorne, because they are punchier than their points would suggest. There is another issue with that we'll get to on the next page, but on the face of it, that sounds okay. And I really like Warhounds. I think they're good. And the Chaos Chariot, being able to take as a core choice, I think that's interesting.
So I think none of those are individually bad, but I don't love spending 33% of the army on those when they're not the... They're not really the draw
33% of your army on a Chaos Lord on Dragon, which is much better.
Which you can still do here.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And there is maybe a Dragon build, although it gets a little hard to do with the points in so much in core. So special, this is, again, 0-1 unit of chosen Chaos Knights. That's disappointing. For the mounted specific detachment to not be able to take a second unit of chosen knights, I don't really understand why that is. You can also take 0-1 unit of chosen chariots per 1,000 points. You can take spawn chariots and chimeras, and also dragon ogres, which are probably the best mounted unit that we've got available to us here.
Mm-hmm.
Then into rare, there's 25% just as standard goal-based chariots, which are fine but really slow. So as much as I like the idea of killing blow on a chariot, it's not that exciting. Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, Giant Spawn of Chaos, again, 1 per 1,000. Same with the Giants, and then also 0 to 1 Warpfire Dragon, which is, we'll get to later on, but you can take those in the Grand Army. You can take 0 to 1 in rare in your regular Chaos Army as well. So it's not something that ties you specifically into this army.
No, but it does fit in with the aggressive, all fast, all cavalry kind of approach here.
Yeah, I've got 1 speed, and that speed is violence. It's it's an army that I'm actually quite excited to play. Even though I'm underwhelmed by how like the power of it and the restrictions, I'm still looking forward to playing it, which is, something at least. Mercenaries, again, you might be playing with mercenaries, and these ones are interesting because you can take Centaur Chieftain and Centaur Herds. Now, these can be drunk, which is a rule which is a negative. So I don't know that I would put them in my army list, especially when I can just take the other cavalry from Beastmen and I don't have to mercenary them in, which is already a bit of a threat.
Yeah.
But
can these ones come with ambush, though? So this might be a way to add some ambushes into a list that otherwise doesn't have it. Although knowing that you don't like ambushes or drunken Centaur, that's probably not a selling point for you.
So I don't like mercenaries because there is a risk pre-game that something goes wrong. I don't like drunken because there's a risk each turn or before the game something goes wrong. I've only skimmed that rule. I looked and I was like, nope, not for me. And then also, ambushes on top of that might tip me over the line, but maybe there is. I'm just pulling it up on my phone now as we speak, but I don't know. It feels wrong for them to be ambushing, so I don't think they can, but maybe that's something that they've got there. Centaur Hordes. No, they can for 1 point per model. Only 1 unit in your army, but that's fine. You're probably not putting a second unit of mercenary Centaur Herds in. Yeah.
It does a thing that other things in the list don't. But if that's the thing that you want...
Yeah. I do appreciate that has value. But let's move on from Centaurs and talk about more rules in the Arcane Journal, which is new and fresh and exciting. This is the special rules. So the first one, I'll let you take this one here. This is a great one.
Yep. This is the mounted host. All characters within the Heralds of Darkness army must be mounted or have the Fly X special rule.
That's really surprising. We haven't seen that in the previous rules for mounted armies, so I'm shocked by that one. But okay, never mind.
Yep.
We can move on.
Although I believe the Dwarf Arcane Journal did not have this rule somehow.
That's odd, yeah, because they've got all of that cavalry. Steeds of Darkness. So this is the one that was previewed yesterday. Cavalry or chariots get to reroll any dice that roll a natural 1 for charge, flee, or pursuit rolls before discarding any dice that are required to be discarded. This is the same wording as Bretonnians. That means you don't get to reroll Swift Stride. That is important to note. It's not very clear the way it's written, but you do just get the charge roll or the flee roll dice there. Yeah. So that's fine. Bretonnians get that for free, or maybe just on the charge roll. But it's not bad for a bit of consistency in your all-mounted army. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I think you're looking to leverage charging from outside of other people's ranges when your whole army is mounted or flying, and this lets you do that moderately more consistently. Which is nice.
I'm not upset to have it. Yeah, as like a secondary rule, it's pretty good. But then the third rule comes in, and this is not a good rule. This is a downside. Basically, you have to match each character with a mark to non-character unit with a mark. So if you've got, for example, 4 Mark of Khorne units in your core, you might have Marauders and Knights with Mark of Khorne. You have to have 4 Mark of Khorne characters. And that is back-breaking. That's so hard to get around. And I talk about that in the list later on, but it's such a huge commitment to actually get punchy troops. Remember, you've got to take 660 points of them as well.
Yeah. And when we have the restrictions in the army selection, the restrictions from the mounted host, and then further restrictions here, there's a lot that you have to give up to get really only the one bonus, I think, which is the Steeds of Darkness rule.
Yeah, that's it. And you can take... no.
You can take a chariot as core.
Yeah, and you can take the chosen chariots, which are fine. You can take them as mounts as well, which is quite nice. And in this, it's clarified that you can only take them in this detachment. It's not like the Black Orc ones where it's a little bit nebulous and you might be able to take them outside. So yeah, that's a little bit disappointing. You don't get a lot of power there, but you do get the chosen chariots, which I do actually quite like. So we'll get on. So moving on to the special characters, we've got Friedal the Chainmaker. So she's an exalted champion. This is the one that isn't coming with a model yet, but hopefully gets one down the line. And obviously can't take her in the Knights unit because she's a heavy infantry. So she's got a host of rules, ambushes, in case you want to put her in Seawolves, because she's tied to the Seawolves detachment, thematically anyway. Chainmaker, 5-up ward from Chaos Armor, Commander and Captain, which is a leadership buff for Chaos Marauders around her. She's got Ensorcel Weapons for AP, Gaze of the Gods, as a Chaos character does. Impact hits 1, which is quite interesting. That's not what I was expecting to see. Mark of Chaos Undivided, Peerless Raider, and Rallying Cry. Do you want to take Chainmaker? What does that one give us?
Yeah, if Friedal or a unit she's joined capture a standard, it's worth 100 victory points instead of the 50 that they normally would be.
Yeah, that's interesting, but I like that on Bretonnians, their banner upgrade that gives them it, because you're a mounted unit and you can catch and chase down units quite easily.
It's a lot easier for Pegasus Knights to capture standards than an infantry character with movement 4.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. She's going to struggle, but hopefully we see a little bit more infantry focus later on down the line. What I don't like about her is that she's heavy infantry and movement 4. Given that she's tied thematically to the Wolves of the Sea, where you see quite a bit of movement 5 and also regular infantry, I'd have preferred to see her fit in with the Marauders more and be able to go with them skirmishing. That would be, I think, interesting.
Yes, although I wonder how fine a tooth comb has been been applied to some of the specific unit designations, but she can very happily go into the Chaos Warrior units if you're trying to soup up a champion. Marauder unit she fits in nicely, and depending on how leadership bonuses layer, potentially getting some of those up to leadership 10, which is something that your regular Chaos Army is not doing very easily.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely true. Speaking of Commander and Captain, unless she's fleeing, Marauders, Marauder Horsemen, Marauder Tribe, Huskarls, and Berserkers gain +1 to their leadership in command range. So, as you point out, if she's the general, that's going to be leadership 9, and then theoretically +1. So that's solid there. And Peerless Raider, what does that one give us?
0 to 1 unit of Chaos Marauders or Marauder Horsemen in the same muster list as Friedal may have the ambushes rule for free. And in addition, you get, and this is, I think, really key, if Friedal is your general, you can get +1 or -1 to the result when rolling to determine if she or any unit of Marauders, Horsemen, Huskarls, or Berserkers that are held in reserve arrive via ambushes.
Yeah. This is like Kilnick, the goblin character who has the same rule, who is on a mount and does that as well. Here's the problem. He's like 100 points. She is 235 points. I don't understand, looking at this character, how they reach that points cost. She's like a tooled up character, but infantry. So
yeah, I mean, I think if you take Exalted Champion statistics and give these special rules and the magic weapon that she's got, that's probably a fair points allocation, except that the Exalted Champion can sit on a horse or a demonic mount or a chariot, and that makes them significantly better on the battlefield. And Friedal does not have any of those options.
She does not. So hopefully we see some way to buff infantry to make it more interesting, because right now I think that 235 points is a bit dead in the water for me.
Well, the Steed of Shadow spell, I guess, may come to rescue us.
Yeah, that's true. Melee is pretty good. So obviously, weapon skill 6, strength 7, including the +2 strength from Storm's Wrath. Only AP 1, but she does get an extra D3 attacks that are magical and require 2 hands. It's basically a magical flail with extra attacks, because she only gets the strength turn 1 and loses a little bit of AP. But yeah, no, the melee's okay. I don't hate that. It's up to 7 attacks, 5 to 7 attacks, hitting a good amount of the time, wounding a good amount of the time.
But I think that ultimately the question is how often do you see a combat infantry character outside of a dwarf brick.
Ah, I can't believe you got there before I was going to say, let me introduce you to a faction here, buddy. Yeah, no, absolutely. You don't see infantry characters very much. So I think we can move on, unless you've got any last thoughts on that.
I can't wait to see what they do with the model.
Mm.
I mean, there's lots of Dark Oath models that could, from the Age of Sigmar Slaves to Darkness, that could do the job for now. Be very cool to see what they do with new models, if and when that happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be very cool. Here's a special character I am excited by. Golrok the Great Drake. This is a dragon. 6s across the board, weapon skill, strength, toughness, wounds, attacks, all that good stuff. Initiative 4, leadership 9, 465 points. So honestly, for a dragon character, kind of cheap. Although you are missing out on some of the layered saves and additional wounds that having a mount and a character tied together would give you. Before we go into the rules, and we'll split off on these a little bit, we'll just point out Golrok is a level 4 wizard. Great. Just
Yep.
you got a dragon beta that's also a level 4 wizard. Has full plate, but also has armored hide 1, so a 3-up save. Has regeneration 5-up in there as well, which takes you to a reasonably tanky model, although I am a little worried about that. I was doing the maths on it, and it only takes, I think 2.4 grudge thrower hits to kill this dragon, which is, it's something. And then you've got a whole host of things. 2 heads, so you've got 2 different breath attacks. I believe they're just the same as the normal dragon ones, although there is a special rule on there as well. You've got Breath of Change, we'll get to. Fly 10, close order, large target. Marker's Inch, really key, because you can swap into the blue fire, get that really nice magic missile.
I'm not certain that you can, because he doesn't have the Law of Chaos special rule.
That's a good point.
May not be able to do that.
That's a little bit of a whoopsie, because I assume he was intended to be able to, but we'll see. Also, Spirit of Golrok, Stomp attacks D6, so fairly standard for a dragon. Swift Stride, Terror, 2-headed dragon. Do you want to walk us through what the Breath of Change can do to a man?
Yeah. Now, this is a great throwback. You can, once per game, instead of using one of your other breath weapons, you can use the Breath of Change, which lays down a template like normal, and you work out if models are being hit like normal. But unlike normal breath weapons, any models that are hit take a toughness test. If they fail, they are removed from play. Just gone. That's it.
This is really funny, and this is going to cause people to lose their minds. And you know what I'm going to tell you? It's not that bad. Don't worry about it, because templates don't auto-hit. You have to, if your template doesn't fully cover a base, you have to roll a 4-up to hit. So the Dragon Lord dies 1 in 12 times, and it's a once per game thing. So this is not something you can build a strategy around. It is a good Hail Mary, and it will make good stories, and it will win games for people. Yeah. But I don't think it's, quite the, oh my god, this is a problem, we've got to do something about it level. What do you think about it?
I agree. However, I think if the rest of the model is good enough, and I think on the surface it is a level 4 wizard with attached that just is a dragon, not even riding a dragon, you're already pretty happy with that for 465 points. And if you're ever able to line it up, you can just take a 1 in 12 shot at removing a dragon, an anvil, a bloodthirster, whatever it is, which is just, it can flip a game on a dice roll, and you're in control of whether or not you go for it. So it is all upside for me.
I will say, just to add to that point, Dark Magic obviously does have the spell where you can pick up a character, even if they're in combat, and teleport them. So that can... I think you might not be able to get within 6 inches, so maybe the Flame template won't hit. I'd have to double check.
8 inches, I think. So
is it really?
That's pretty spicy.
I'm just going to sneak in your backlines, kill a high elf dragon. I think this is a fun rule. I think it is a good rule, and I think I'm not going to lose my mind over it.
I think the other thing worth saying as well is that there's no saves, right? So if you can just use it like a normal breath weapon on things that are toughness 3, it's better than the other breath weapon options that you've got. Against especially...
I don't think it is. So if we just flick over, so if you look here, it's got the standard strength 4 AP1 breath weapon. So into T3 units, you'd be wounding those 66% of the time, whereas with the Breath of Change, they'd be failing half the time.
Yes.
So
But getting rid of the saves, I was thinking
Yeah.
things like your Dragon Princes, Bretonnian Knights, and
Oh
so
yeah,
on.
100%. Yes, like heavy cavalry, T3 or T4 heavy cavalry with like especially 2-up saves. That's
Yeah.
really nice into. But if you're putting it into like a standard anything with I think a 4-up save, a 4-up save is about equal. And a 5-up save, I think it's better to use the regular strength 4 AP1 breath weapon.
Yeah.
But there are absolutely going to be times where you just go, oh, this is actually really good for me. Like, for example, you're playing against monstrous infantry. That's when it's actually quite nice.
Oh, yeah, actually, I'd not even thought of that. That is, well, luckily, something else to keep ogres in their place.
Absolutely, yeah. Or dragon ogres, which is an actual good unit. That's something that I'd be very scared about going up against my dragon ogres. You probably only killed one of them, but you've killed a dragon ogre with a breath weapon. That's just, that's a little bit spicy. Perfect. So we've done this page. Don't worry, there's another page of rules. So the Spirit of Golrak. This is toned down from previous editions, and they do say that in their little brief that they put up yesterday or the day before, which I like. They make it so it's now you don't just ruin yourself if you fail a leadership test, because start a turn subphase, make a leadership test. If passed, you control as normal. If you fail, you rebel from within. You become a level 1 wizard instead of a level 4 wizard for that turn. You can only cast 1 spell. So, you still have some spell casting, but not as much. You get random movement, 2d6, although with the way that is at the moment, you can just not move or move as far as you want. So that's not actually much of a downside. And if you are engaged in combat, D3 of your attacks hit you, or you have to roll to hit against yourself, which is interesting. I guess you have got 2 heads. And then the rest of them can go elsewhere. And those wounds are added to your enemy's combat res. So I think this is much better than it used to be, because I remember just tearing chunks out of myself in previous editions.
Yes. However, I think it is a really big problem to fail the test. You're losing not only your magic offense, but also, if this is your wizard, your magic defense, because I believe it's
True.
lasting until your next start of turn subphase.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair point.
And if you're planning on fighting combat, a lot of the time, if you're looking at charging from outside of people's charge ranges, random movement 2d6 won't let you do it. And if you're fighting, you're losing attacks and potentially adding to enemy combat resolution. So I think this is a really big problem if you fail the leadership test. But you're a level 4 dragon character the rest of the time. So this is what lets you get away with a sort of 400 and something points price tag, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Then 2-headed dragon, you've got the 2 breath weapons again. I think these are just the standard ones that the Chaos Dragon has. But also you have Wicked Claws in combat. And despite having 2 heads, you don't have to make 2 attacks of that terrible profile that most mounts have, which is like Strength User, AP 0, but 2 damage. Armor Bane 2. None of that. You just get to use your claws here, and then you get to stomp as a behemoth. So D6, Strength 6, AP 2, auto hits as well. Yeah, I think it's fair to say we both really like Golrak.
I think my impression is that you like it. You like it more than me, and that's because I'm just tempered by the spirit test. Probably what is it? 1 turn in 6, you probably fail, and
sure.
And if that's and that will sometimes not matter too much, especially like on turn 1, you can play around it, and in the late game, it might not matter.
Yeah.
But in those mid turns, that could maybe cost you a really good opportunity, or it might lose you the dragon, depending on what people have got set up in response. So, yeah, I think it's good, but swingy and not something that you can. Like we were saying with the Marauder, the Marauder host champion thing, you get to decide if we're going into the Thunderdome. With Golrak, you don't get that choice. It's happening whether you like it or not.
That's true. That is a genuine downside. Just to draw your attention to something here, not a lord, not a sorcerer, just fits into any army. So if you're playing Wolves of the Sea and you go, I can only take a Chaos Lord or a sorcerer, take that Chaos Lord and Dragon. Make him, 535 points, which is lower than you'd want to go. But then just take a second Dragon who's also a spellcaster.
Yep. I had not cottoned on to that, and that's really nice. The fact that Golrush could just go anywhere. That's really nice, and that's a hidden thing in the Marauder, the Wolves of the Sea list that suits them really well. Getting first turn with multiple dragons.
Oh god, yeah, yeah, it really does, because you could just really full send with those dragons. Because there's another one coming up, but like let's move on to the Marauder tribe chieftain. Way more exciting than just some sort of rare dragon. Who
Yeah.
wants to see those? So this is a fairly standard human character. Weapon skill 5, strength and toughness 4, 2 wounds, 3 attacks. Leadership 8 is actually quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
65 points, cheap for a chaos character. If you wanted for some reason to not spend many of your character points, which is where your best stuff is, but you don't have to. If you didn't want to do that, you could not do it and take Marauder Tribe Chieftain. They are regular infantry, as I was bemoaning. 25 mil hand weapon light armor.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of options here. I don't think we need to read through them. You'd expect to see it from seeing Marauders. You're probably going to take a flail or a great weapon. Cav spear, I guess, if you're mounted, is fine. You can take some ranged weapons. You can take shields. You can be mounted on a warhorse. You can take marks of corn. I've just said we don't have to go through them. I've just read them all.
Yeah, a couple of things to I think worth pointing out from that. It's a warhorse, not a chaos steed, so I think that opens up which units the Marauder Tribe Chieftain is able to join.
Yes.
And being a really cheap model that can take a battle standard is something, even though you want to spend lots of points on your characters, you can fit this into a lot of lists that have some big characters as well. So you might be able to get a dragon, a level 4, and a battle standard, whereas in other builds you might not be able to afford that. So I think it's definitely got a role to play, especially with, I guess I might be preempting you here, but the special rules, I think a couple of key ones there.
Yeah, why don't you take us through the special rules?
Ambushes is an option. Chaos armor of 6+ is fine.
It's free.
Gaze of the Gods and Undivided and Rallying Cry, but Warband is the one that I really like here. If this is your general, you only need 2 ranks to then, in a Warband unit, to then be Leadership 10, throwing a big bubble of that around. That is more leadership than Galrosh has normally, and is now passing an extra, an extra 1 in however many.
It would now down to be a 1 in 12 fail instead of a 1 in 6. So that's actually a huge difference.
Yes, so I think that Warband plus Leadership 8 character is something. It's a different dimension or another angle to explore with specifically the Wolves of the Sea, because I don't think this can be taken outside of that.
No, it is just in this one, and then it does say down at the bottom, how would I represent it? You can make it from models that exist. Thanks, Games Workshop. Glad you cleared that up. You can take the Warhorse, 14 points, which is a move 8 light cavalry, and it has countercharge and fast cav and swift stride, which is a good set of rules. I really like countercharge there, because normal Chaos Knights don't have it, right? It's just they're chosen.
I think so, and you need to have every model with countercharge. Is it one of those ones? Yeah. And we'll see in a minute with some of the other units that's a nice thematic pairing, at least with this model.
Absolutely. So then we've got the Marauder Tribe Berserkers. Now, these are Marauders. They've got a very similar stat line, Weapon skill 4, strength 3, T4, 1 wound.
Well, T4 is different.
Oh, are they higher toughness and Marauder's not T4?
I'm going to have to double check.
No, you're probably right. I just see a naked man and I think he's a buff hunker, a big old slice of man meat. He must be T4. But no, I think that's fair. I'm probably just conflating them with Slayers in my head. So the while you're looking that up, the thing that I wanted to talk about is movement 5.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, buddy. That is, when you're only 4 inches, 1 inch extra is a big upgrade.
And I spent most of the square-based tournament I went to thinking my Forsaken had movement 4, and when I discovered they had movement 5, I was over the moon. So can confirm that the move from 4 to 5 is a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're fairly similar in terms of loadout to what you can take for normal Marauders. You're probably going to give them flails, realistically. You can take throwing axes, but you won't because you're never going to be able to shoot them. You can take command, the standard. They can have ambushes for a pointer model. And then they've got some special rules. You can't take marks of corn. You can't take marks, but you've got Mark of Corn built in, but also Mark of Chaos Undivided, which I think is interesting because having the rerolls is quite nice. So you get Frenzy. Mark of Chaos Undivided, move through cover, a really underrated rule. I like this a lot, especially on skirmishes. Open Order, Relentless Warriors, skirmishes, and Warband as well. Warband, if you're taking them as skirmishes, I don't get the bonus to my leadership. I guess I just get to reroll my charges, which is quite nice on a frenzied unit.
Yep, especially when there was a whole Army of Infamy built around re-rolling ones. You can just re-roll the whole thing here.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You also get Relentless Warriors, which is a model with the special rule, has a 6-up ward against any non-magical attacks. That's just good.
Yeah.
It's free. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, everything's rolled in, but just having a ward on a lightly armored unit is really nice. Because you've got a 6-up armor save and a 6-up save against bowfire. That's going to save more than your opponent likes. You're going to make a couple of 6s on each roll, and they're going to go, I feel like I should have killed more models.
I mean, just comparing them point to point for Marauders, they're already compared favorably without the ward save, so it's just added on top. They're a very nice stat line for the points you're paying.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think they're fantastic. I don't love Frenzy on a 5-inch move unit, but I'm just going to full send my entire army, so it doesn't matter. And also, this is something that I might actually bring in from Ambush because it's so easy to lead them around the board. I'll just not let you do it. Yeah. I'm going to choose where they come on. I might not choose when, but I will choose where. So that's something.
Yeah, I'd be less excited by large units of these because, as you say, getting frenzy baited and taking up big chunks of points is bad. Yeah. But small units are going to hit extremely hard, and with toughness 4 and a ward save, be much more annoying to get rid of than you'd think.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and they are cheap. And you can run MSU with these. Any list that we're talking about, we're using the sort of square-based pack, which has become fairly standard around. Obviously, people do run different things, but it's sort of rule of 3, but rule of 6 for your core. So you could theoretically run 6 units of these, 6 units of Marauders if you wanted to go really MSU.
Yep.
Perfect. So then we're on to, let's just go on to the Huskarls before we go into Sin Walls, try and wrap up the Marauder stuff here. So Huskarls are a light cavalry still, but they're the heavy cavalry of light cavalry. So they are, toughness 4 again, which is nice. Other than that, weapon skill 4, 1 attack, initiative 3, decent leadership 7 or 8 on the first sword there. Come in swords of 5+, come with a hand weapon and light armor. You can then buy the things you'd expect to be able to. Cav spears for free, flails for a point a model. You can take ranged weapons. I'm more excited about ranged weapons on this unit, although you don't necessarily need to. You can spend a point to give them heavy armor, which doesn't slow them down, which is nice. You can give them shields for a point as well. This unit can have a mark because they don't come stock with frenzy, so you can give it to them or you can give them something else. Then you've got command. You can have a magic standard on a Marauder unit, which is quite spicy. Some options that you might want to look at there. You can give 0 to 1 unit per 1,000 points drilled, which is an incredible rule to see. Anytime I see that, I'm like, okay, let me read this unit again. I'm excited.
Yeah, drilled on cavalry is just the business.
It's so good. And you can also have 25 points of magic items, which I'm less excited by. Potentially favor of the gods, but we need to see how that works. And then you've got special rules. So close order, which is not something you necessarily get on light cavalry a lot. Counter charge, furious charge, swift stride, and warband.
That is, I'd missed the furious charge on my first read through of these. That is a lot of with a mark of corn and some flails, and that's a lot of counter charging attacks you can get out of your drilled formations.
100%.
That is mildly terrifying.
Yeah. Or if you wanted to have a little bit more control over them and still make them a threat, flails, heavy armor, shields, they start to get a little bit pricey. Mark of Slanesh, countercharge threat. If your opponent's playing like a very heavy melee army and they have to charge into you, you just put this in front of your lines and go, you can charge me. I'm going to be at initiative 7 with, 2 attacks each, strength 5, AP 2. That's going to put a dent in a lot of things.
Yeah, I think these are really good. It's a sort of medium cavalry unit, which is pretty unusual for the old world. But I think they're pointed. They're a little bit expensive for a kind of main battle line unit, but they hit so hard for a sort of support unit that they've got to find a home in a lot of lists, I think.
Yeah, I really like them on the basis of they are that sort of in between unit, and I think they're going to take a little bit of finesse to use well. But I think that it's a good unit for skill expression. They're sort of Wild Riders light, but I like them being the light version of Wild Riders because they are way less points investment and easier to control as well because you don't have to give them frenzy and still make them hit pretty hard. Fantastic. So I think we're on to, let's go now into the Skin Wolves. I've been waiting to talk about Skin Wolves. Oh, I love this unit.
Yeah, take the lead.
So this is Monstrous Infantry. But really, it's Monstrous Cavalry. It just doesn't say it. They have a 7-inch move and they have Swift Stride. I'm just going to start you off there. Now, I have your attention. That's incredible. Weapon skill 5 on Monstrous Infantry. Are you having a laugh? That's so good. Monstrous Infantry are characterized by having big hands and no dexterity, so this is really good. Strength and Toughness 4, it's fine. 3 wounds, Initiative 4, that's actually really nice. 3 attacks, Leadership 7, 45 points. As Monstrous Infantry go, that's a solid, bottom of A, top of B already. I'm happy to see these rules. They come in squads of 2+. Great, immediately. I'm really happy to see small units. I probably want to take them in bigger units, but having that flexibility is nice. They do only have hand weapons, and you can take a character upgrade for 7 points. I'm usually not going to do that. I don't think there's any reason to take a multi-wound unit champion in the Wolves of the Sea detachment. Again, if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But they've got a host of rules. So they come with Mark of Chaos Undivided. They can't take a mark, but they get the reroll of the panic tests, etc., which is just nice to have. Open Order or Swift Stride. Great. A 7-inch move Swift Stride unit with skirmishes it's not Pegasus Knights, but it's getting, exciting. Yeah. Then it's got Warped Form, which is, the rule down below. When you choose the unit in combat, you get to take one of the transfigurations. So you get to get either AP 1 and Armor Bane 2, extra attacks 1, or improve their toughness by 1 and armor value of 2. And something we both noticed and we're very excited about. In fact, do you want to talk about this little aspect of it?
Yeah, so you get the Warped Form ability when the unit is picked in the Choose and Fight combat subphase, but it lasts until your next start of turn subphase. So you charge them in. When you pick them to fight, you get to roll up an ability or choose an ability. Then if you're still fighting, whether you've followed up or someone's charged into you, in the following, in their turn, you then get to add another one. So you can go... what's that? AP2 Armor Bane 4 or +2 toughness and +4 to your armor value.
Yeah, because it doesn't say that it doesn't stack, so you could theoretically just go for both, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they just say it is improved by on these things. So yeah, if you've improved it once, you can improve it again, I guess.
Armor Bane specifically called out as one of the rules that stacks in terms of the numbers, so that's cool.
So yeah, subsequent rounds of actually extra attacks might not do that. I'd need to check the FAQ.
Yeah, but that's fine because that's the one you're least likely to take. So don't even worry about it.
So in a subsequent round of combat, and as you were saying, bigger units of these are probably leaning more into that. Yeah. They go from being good to really good quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be interesting choices to make. So if you're ahead on initiative, you could, say you're fighting in something with initiative 2, you might end up going for the toughness and the AP, toughness and the armor, and just going, I'm going to grind out this combat because I don't think I can win it in one go, and then next turn I'll get the AP and the armor bane, or just double AP and armor bane because. Great. I really like it thematically. It's like they're getting more and more frenzied as they're digging into the corpses around them.
And speaking of those, did we talk about Primal Fury and Blood Rage as well? So if you're...
we did not.
You're like the Beastman units, you take a leadership test. If you, pass, you get to reroll 1s to hit, which with weapon skill 5 is great. And if you pass on a double, I think you get Frenzy, which...
I think that's correct, yes.
More attacks. So the actual profile that's listed at the top is nothing like what they're actually going to be potentially doing in the combat itself.
Yeah.
And the profile's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're fighting into something like demons with a ward save, or if you're fighting into something with like a negligible armor save, you might end up just going, you know what, I'll take that frenzy, I'll take that extra attack. I've got 5 attacks per model. I'm going to be hitting with most of them. Goodbye, skeletons.
Yes, not that killing skeletons is something warriors have a huge problem with,
Yeah.
but the thing is, it's not going to be just skeletons, because if you charge into, if you ever get the charge on something like knights, you can start ripping away their armor really quickly as well.
And something that's really important to note here is that you have the same movement as most heavy cavalry. Yes, Bretonians are faster. Let's not worry about that. But a lot of heavier cavalry in the game has Swift Strider movement 7. So do you. You know what you can't countercharge? Infantry. So it's really hard for them to jockey. Yes, you have the same problem, but you might be able to catch them by surprise. You can Steed of Shadows this unit if you want to.
And there's skirmishes, which is it's really hard to wrap I find it really hard to wrap my head around how much more maneuverable that makes things. It's a lot. And it's what makes Pegasus Knights go from being good to like turbo busted. And I'm not saying Skin Wolves are turbo busted, but they seem really good. And
in terms of Monstrous Infantry, they're some of the best in the game. I think that's a fair comment to make. Where Monstrous Infantry rank in general, but they've got the maneuverability to do things. They struggle into high armor values. They struggle into high toughness. But I think, especially like small skirmish units of these are exciting. Or if you wanted to go for a bigger unit of these, I think you can make that work. I think there's a lot of play to it, especially if you've got, I don't know, a dark magic caster like Golrock, who might cast, yes, they potentially can get Frenzy and Hatred or like rerolling ones to hit. But what if you just didn't have to rely on that and you just cast it on them as a spell for, guaranteed?
Yeah.
It's an option.
Yeah, or you might just have a level 4 on Demonology to give them, +1 movement, toughness, and initiative?
Yeah, the only issue is you have to join the unit, which means they wouldn't be able to be skirmishers, but you could put a monstrous cavalry model in with them.
One of them can affect other units within range.
Dark magic can. It's not the good spell in Demonology.
It's the other one. I think you can.
But if you do, like, you could cast a demonic transformation or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The 6th spell in the Demonology lore on them. Give them +1 toughness, charge into combat. Give them +1 toughness. Hey, I've got toughness 6 monstrous infantry. Is that a good thing to do? No. Is it funny? Yes.
Well, especially if it's
yes.
It's Mark of Nurgle. You could go the Nurgle signature spell, and now they're toughness 7. So
I've got to do that at some point. Don't let your memes be dreams, kids. Let's get it done. I want to say, if you do it, let me know. Just shoot me a message, and I will say good job, buddy, with a thumbs up. So moving on, we've got chariots, and this is a chosen Chaos Chariot. You'll have to take my word for it. The top's cut off, but it is on this governor. 140 points. So you're looking at 30 points more than a normal chariot. Other than that, it's basically the same equipment, same armor value, hand weapons and halberds. You can still take a mark. I don't think that I would necessarily, especially because in the detachment you can take them in. You've got to take a mark to match them. So I think it's just setting yourself up for more logistical pain if you try and mark them. But yeah, they're chosen. They're 2 attacks, weapon skill 5, strength 5, AP 1. There's no reason not to use the halberds unless you want to kill something ethereal. There's one reason to not use halberds. Special rules wise, close order, countercharge, which is really nice.
Yeah. I'd missed that on the first read through.
Ensorcel weapons, first charge, so turning off the rank bonus. This is a unit that absolutely destroys infantry, as you might expect. Obviously, we're not seeing huge amounts of infantry, but if that becomes more of a thing, keep it in mind. Impact hits, D6+1, Mark of Chaos Undivided. Here's the thing, and I want some clarity on this because I don't actually know the answer. It's been FAQ'd that Chaos Steeds have countercharge. Does that mean the Chaos Steed unit upgrade? Because it's not a unit, it's an upgrade. Does that mean that the upgrade that characters can buy have that? Or does it mean that any Chaos Steed, including the one pulling the normal chariot, has it? Because it's not clear.
My guess is that normal Chaos Chariots don't have countercharge, and this one does, which is what makes it different.
Yeah, sure. I can get behind that. I don't know the answer. Yeah. So this is I think this is fine. This is like a Black Oak Chariot, which I've played around with a fair amount. It's a very similar points cost. It's very similar output. You've got a halberd instead of a great weapon, which has upsides and downsides. You've got better weapon skill. So yeah, there's very, very similar there.
Yeah, for me,
Countercharge,
it's
very exciting.
yeah, for me, it's all about the countercharge because normally your chariot just gets outranged by cavalry with Swiss Stride, and
Yeah,
so you're just getting charged and don't get your impact hits.
yeah,
This lets you get them, and if you have a character on it, for example, getting the impact hits plus the character's output is going to stack up really nicely. So I like this a lot more than I did before I realized it had countercharge.
yeah. I quite like this as a character mount, as you'll see as we get on down the line. But I think on their own they're fine. With a character on top where you can layer some defenses, like an aspiring champion, 70 points, comes with a 5-up ward just built in. So
Mhm.
I think that's where you really turbocharge these things and give them those extra wounds as well. Lovely. Then we've got the gigantic spawn. Oh man, gigantic spawn are so good. We said
Mhm.
before, I think these might be the best non-ridden monster in the game. There's another one coming. I think this is better than it. I think this is better than everything else. Mangler squigs are the only thing that I'm like, maybe that's a bit better, just because it's so much cheaper.
See, I have the opposite feeling in a way where I feel like this, all of the weaknesses in the Mangler Squig that for me make them uh, just a little bit hard to take.
Yeah.
This just overcomes all of those, and it's. I think, yeah, I agree. It's super solid.
Yeah, not to derail, my only argument is you can take almost 2 full Mangler squigs for one of these. So that's the trade-off there.
Yeah.
So we've got 145 points. It's a random moving unit, 3d6. That's the good amount of random movement. Weapon skill 3, it's got to suck somewhere. Strength 6, toughness 6, wound 6. So it's a giant stat line, basically. Initiative 3, d6 plus 1 attacks on the random attacks. Leadership 10. Yes, it's unbreakable, but it might get screamed at by vampire counts. 145 points. That is cheap. And it's not going to be 145 points because you're going to take one of the spawn, which is key to note, not a mark. So this doesn't limit you in the Knight's detachment. Then it's, Behemoth, standard size base for a Behemoth, slashing talons, gnashing maw, scaly skin. Sounds like the Jabberwock. And you can take one of the following. Gigantic Spawn of Khorne is 20 points, Nurgle is 25, Slanesh is 15, Tzeentch is 10 points. So, before we get into those, there are a lot of special rules here. Not quite the same as a Doomseeker, or maybe more actually. Armorbane 2, Close Order. First charge, turning off that rank bonus is nice to have, because this thing will eat most things it gets into, but not to the level where you're just winning combats on combat res. Immune to Psychology, large target, random attacks, random movements, stomp attacks d6. So again, another just like it's a giant but better. Terror, Timber, Unbreakable. That's a lot of rules.
A lot of good rules as well.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the full D6 on Stomp is great. Every time I roll a D3 for my Stomps, I weep a little inside.
Yeah.
And being Behemoth rather than Monstrous Creature, so getting the armor piercing on those as well, all just goes together really nicely.
Yeah, I really like this thing. I think the less shooting you see in your meta, the better this is. If you're playing into like lots of melee, this thing's incredible. If you're playing into lots of shooting, this is still good. But it does affect which mark you take a little bit, I think.
Maybe not for me, because I think the mark I think is the best I think I'd be taking regardless. But I think target saturation is something that Chaos couldn't do very easily when you just have a dragon.
Sure.
And when you have a dragon and some spawn and a dragon and another spawn, that starts to become... there's only so many cannons you can take.
Yes, no, I agree. That is absolutely true. So let's talk about the... Oh, well, first of all, its normal attacks are strength 6 AP 1, and it's got a single attack, which is strike last, strength 6 AP 2. And here's the reason I do like Mark of Khorne, which is very silly. For each wound an enemy unit loses as a result of an attack made with this weapon, this model immediately recovers a single lost wound. You can only make one attack with that. That's weird. Let's have a look at Mark of Khorne. Well, it gives you impact hits D3. Okay, cool. No AP on them, so I'm not super jazzed. Oh, and the Killing Blow special rule. So if I eat a Demon Prince, I would gain back checks notes 4 wounds. That's incredible. I don't think it's intended, to be honest. I think that's probably something that they're going to shake their fist at the clouds. But I think that's a very funny interaction, and one of the reasons that I don't like Mark of Khorne the most, but I do like it.
I mean, I do like it, and adding on the impact hits as well is nice if we're leaning into the Mangler Squeak comparison.
Yeah.
Slightly more reliable, having more stacked on the stomp than on the impact hits, but just doing more damage with this big thing when it gets in
Yeah.
is pretty important, especially when AP1 on most of its attacks. You just want to keep loading more on, and the killing blow on those attacks, again, when you're AP1, helps a lot.
Yeah. I think if it was AP2, I'd be less jazzed about the killing blow, but it's not. So there is that. Do you want to talk about the one we both agree is the best?
So your gigantic spawn of Nurgle can have poison attacks, which is fine, and regeneration 5+, which is incredible. And I'm sure this is a family-friendly show. Otherwise, we could use some more.
That's fucking great, mate.
Yeah, great. Absolutely fucking incredible. On an unbreakable unit. What's the drawback on regenerate? They still get combat resolution.
Yeah.
What doesn't care about combat resolution? Unbreakable spawn. So your 6 wound starts to look more like 10, I think, on average.
Yeah, because so for anyone who thinks that the math's wrong, the way that say regeneration works, or any save, is it's recursive. So each time you make the save, each time you pass it, you've effectively added a wound. It's complicated maths. 6 wounds is more than 8. Just trust us on that. Anyway, it's incredible. Poison attacks, as you say, is great. Regen 5 up. So what's interesting is that you can take a Chaos Giant and give it regen 6 up for 20 points, I believe it is. Is it 20 points? I think it is 20 points for so like 200. I think it's 230 points to give a Chaos Giant a 5 up save and a 6 up regen. Or for 170 points, you can have the same stat line with random move, with better attacks. Yes, less chance of spiking on a funny table, but more actual good stuff. Same stomp attacks and just a better regen.
Yeah, I am blown away by this profile, and I think the Nurgle gigantic spawn upgrade is exactly what you want. You just make this big thing stick around for longer to keep rolling out D6 +1 attacks and D6 stomps.
Yeah.
I do, however, I quite like the Slanesh one as well.
Yeah.
We were just talking about countercharge before.
They've written 3, and all 3 of them like, okay. And then the Zinch, but we don't talk about Zinch.
So you can get, with the Slanesh, you get countercharge and strikes first. Strikes first is fine. You're usually happy enough to cop some attacks back, but getting the regen, really, really nice. When you're random moving 3d6, you're often rolling the wrong number, and then you get charged by cavalry. And my Mangler Squigs have this happen to them all the time. But here, getting to countercharge back lets you do a lot of things, changing directions, getting closer to the enemy. You don't get the impact hits because you can't have this and the Mark of Khorne, but you start to get your initiative up as well as having strikes first. So maybe there's some redundancy there, but
I think I'm not super jazzed about it, just on the basis of you've got strikes first anyway, so the initiative doesn't matter. Obviously, that's good, but I think a lot of the damage comes in from the stomps. They're more exciting, and I just probably want the regen to get to the stomps. Yeah. But it's just, that's 2 great rules that I was not expecting to see. Like, more of this, please. And then, as we said, the Zinch, flaming attacks, magical resistance 2. If you're playing Chaos, you shouldn't be having issues with spells. You should be taking the Infernal Puppet and sending that bad boy to the middle of the board and saying, no, you don't get to cast spells.
As someone who is very, very, very afraid and scared and a coward, I would in fact stack Magic Res and the Infernal Puppet if that was something I was worried about. But also, some people may just want a thematic army and not be selecting just the best upgrade to match tabletop performance. And for 10 points, Magic Res 2, pretty good on one of your big monsters.
And Zinch is very fitting for Spawn, the god of change. So yeah, that's fair. And like all the rules you get on there, you're like, that is worth 10 points. It's just when you look at everything else around it, you're like, maybe I'll have 1 Nurgle unit in my Zinch army.
Well, 2. If it's 2.
Yeah, of course, 2. Because that's the thing, you can take 1 per 1,000 points. So, 340 points doesn't even fill out your rare. I'm a big fan of that. Yeah. Speaking of rare, speaking of monsters, speaking of dragons, which we have done, and speaking of Zinch, we've got the Warpfire dragons. I don't know why it's pluralized. You can only take one in any army.
But
So
every army can have one.
Yeah. So interesting choice there. It is a dragon stat line. Move, weapon skill, strength, toughness, wounds 6. Attacks 5, which is odd, but it is a little bit less melee focused and a bit more long range than you might expect. Leadership 8 is fine. 375 points. So this is probably what I'd expect to pay for this sort of unridden dragon with extra rules. I think it feels about fine. But you can put it in rare. So basically, this is the third dragon that we keep sort of toying around, where you can go Lord on Dragon, Golrock, Warpfire Dragon. And you can legitimately have 3 T6 doubles or triple save dragons in your army very comfortably. Mm-hmm. Do you want to give us a run through on just the dragon?
Yeah. So the dragon has various extra rules. First up, it can be a wizard, level 1 or 2, with battle magic, demonology, or dark magic. I like battle magic on this to get Hammerhand. I like demonology on this to hopefully roll one of the good demonology combat spells.
Yeah. It does have Lore of Chaos, so you can swap into not the pink fire because you're blue fire because you don't have the Moccasin. I'll shut up.
Yeah, but there is a Mark of Undivided one, which it's like a movement debuff. It's not something exciting.
Yeah.
But 3 good Lords of Magic, and I probably am leaning towards battle just because you have the reliable add-on to combat damage, which, whilst this has some ranged output, I think I'm still taking it just as a third worst combat dragon.
It's still a dragon, and it has rules that make you want to get to combat as well, I think. So that's a very fair shout.
So there's lots of rules. It flies. It's a large target. It's got magic attacks. Magic resistance 2, just on the model. Great. Again, big centerpiece models are what your opponent wants to cast spells at. So having magic res is great there. Chaos Undivided, bit of panic test mitigation. Regenerate 5+. So we've already got...
Why is it got a 5-up regen?
Yeah, we've got Regenerate and a 4+ armor save already.
You know what's Stride. Really about that? Sorry, just to butt in, because you probably are going to take battle magic because it's the one. It's got the most spells that are just sort of generically good. It's got a signature spell that you're excited to, not excited, but it's like solid in combat. It also has a ward save. So you might just get a ward save, cast Oaken Shield on yourself, and be like, "Oh, I'm a triple save dragon in the rare slot with no magic items. I don't know how this has happened, but I'm sorry, I'm a bad person."
Well, but maybe you don't roll up Oaken Shield, and so instead we'll just skip down to Fire and Chaos. Warpfire Dragons have a 5+ ward save against any wounds suffered that were caused by an attack with magical or flaming attacks. So against magical things or flaming things, you're already a triple save dragon without anything else.
A lot of the time, that's not going to matter too much. You know what? That does matter when you're playing against dwarves, as I am wont to do. Obviously, I play against Richie a lot. He likes grudge throwers, and he puts runes on those grudge throwers. They're magical attacks. Sorry, Richie, you've given me an extra save.
Yep, a 5-up, 5-up against those is those 6 wounds are going to go a lot further than it looks at first glance.
Oh yeah, so a 5-up, 5-up that isn't reduced by AP. That means that you take less than half of the incoming damage. You take 45% of the incoming damage, and you also have full plate. So, yeah, that's just going to be a real pain in the backside. You don't even die to poison, like a lot of the time.
I've been definitely using like 3 light saves on a Demon Prince quite a lot, and it's you take very few wounds for how much damage you take.
Yeah.
If you do take too many wounds, you will have an explosive demise. When a Warpfire Dragon loses its last wound, before it's removed from play, every unit within 6 takes D6 Strength 5 hits with AP 2.
Hell yeah. Not D6, not Timber, where you roll off. You just blow up. You put a 6-inch pie plate down. You don't technically do that. You just cover a big area in a weird sort of oval because of your base shape. But yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. And there are reasons that you might want to get close to the enemy, such as Warpfire Aura. Other models, friends and foe, so not yourself if you've given yourself a ward save, but everyone else within 3 inches doesn't get a ward save. That is disgusting. That is so good.
Yeah. And there are quite a few, well, at least some units that are leaning very heavily on their ward saves to keep them alive. Something like Forsaken, and this will just go through them like toast.
Yeah, absolutely will. Especially because you're getting 5 attacks at strength user, strength 6, AP2. You've got your D6 stomps. You've potentially got your hammer hand for 2D3 hits at strength 4, AP2. Like, you got a lot of AP2. So Forsaken, you really don't want to see this model. But what if you're scared? What if you are a cautious player and you do like having your puppet and alter the fact that you've got magic resist too? Well, maybe you'd want to shoot your opponent. You can do that. Leaning into battle magic then makes more sense, because if you roll, for example, Fireball and Pillar of Flame, which will happen sometimes, not every time, but occasionally it'll happen, you might just go, I think I might just have a mobile artillery piece, you know? Because I've got a short-range stone thrower, 6 to 24-inch range, strength 4 AP1, or center hull, strength 8 AP3. Those are the good numbers you're looking for. It's bombardment, cumbersome, flaming attacks, noticeably not move and shoot like every other stone thrower, understandably. And multiple wounds, D3+1 on the center hull. That's a good stone thrower. That is what I look for in a stone thrower. It's, yeah.
And I think this will come up quite a lot, because you don't always need to march with this on your setup turns. So you can just fly 10 inches, drop a stone thrower, and threaten a big area with a charge. And if your opponent moves out of that, you can just fly again and chuck another stone thrower.
Yeah. If you're playing against artillery, you might want to try and snipe their artillery. That's a good shout. Or if you're playing against multiple, a behemoth versus behemoth matchup, you might want to, when you're doing that sort of jockeying for charges, you can just put the pressure on. You go, okay, I've got, potentially Galrock and this. I've got 2 casters. I've got a stone thrower. You're the one who has to make the risky position move, and I'm going to capitalize on that. I really like this. I think it's great. I will just point out, let's have a look at that stat line. Ballistic skill 0, baby. Hell yeah. Almost never matters, but if you shoot on line of sight, which you can do, despite it being only 24-inch range, so you can still get behind that house. If you roll a hit, you just still scatter the full number rolled. But that's fine. That comes up very rarely, because you're never going to roll a hit because your dice hate you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And what is it on a misfire? It just takes a wound?
Let's have a look here. Misfire, lose a single wound. Yeah. The wording on that's not clear. Do you still get to take regens against those?
I don't think so, because you lose the wound, which
I think you shouldn't. Yes.
Yeah. I think at the point you've lost it, you've already gone past the chance to take saves.
I agree. I know some tournaments don't rule it that way, so just double check your TO's pack. But if you're just playing with friends, just don't take saves. Don't be that guy. Unless you both agree, in which case, have a great time.
But yeah, if you're both using Warpfire Dragons, for example.
Hell yeah. Magic items. There are some magic items in this book, and some of them are exciting, and I'm not excited by the first one.
Nope.
It's 55 points. It's worse than a great weapon. Strength +2, AP -1, Armor Bane 1, Killing Blow, magical attacks, requires 2 hands, strikes last. Why does it strike last?
Good question.
It's a worse great weapon with Killing Blow that can only be taken in a knight army. I could just take lances.
Well, I'm just thinking now, I need to check the item wording, but isn't there a great weapon with Killing Blow just as a common magic item? The headsman, strength +1, AP1, Killing Blow, 2 hands, doesn't strike last. So you get 1 extra strength, you strike last, and it costs 10 extra points.
Yeah, if you really want to take this, you can take the Enchanting Aura to give them strikes last as well. So if you charge, you fight first. Yay. That's there. Yeah, all right, we'll move on. Dagger of the Dark Pantheon. This is interesting. I don't think I'm taking it, but I'm interested. 35 points. Strength user AP2. That's not the important stuff. For each wound an enemy unit loses as a result of an attack made with this dagger, its wielder may apply a +1 modifier to the next casting or dispel roll. That's interesting. I don't know how I'm going to pull it off, but that's interesting.
Another question of things we don't know. If you're casting an assailment spell like Doppelganger with this, I don't know if anyone can do it. I don't know if we've got illusion access.
No, you don't. Good. Thank fuck. That would have just made things muddy.
Yeah, just like +7 on your next cast roll or whatever.
You could take the Wizarding Hat as a level 1 caster.
Yes.
And then roll it. And if you get it off once, you're more likely to get it off next time you try and cast it, because you've done so many wounds. Yeah, you potentially cast it at like +7 despite being a level 1 character with stupidity.
But that aside, I've been liking the idea of combat wizards who sit in units of things like warriors or knights and try to cast 1 or 2 assailment spells and some combat buffs.
This is the army for it.
It's really hard to make it work, but if you're going in that direction, this is a helpful extra thing.
Yeah, Sorcerer Lord, I think, has 3 attacks at Strength 4. 3 attacks, Weapon Skill 5, Strength 4, AP 2. That's not awful.
And those are going up if you're taking some Favor of the Gods rolls, so you can end up with Strength 5 or extra attacks.
Demonology, which is typically the lore that you want to go for if you're buffing, gets you up to a 4th attack, Strength 5, AP 3. You're actually worrying a lot of things in the game with that. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not taking it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's my fun project, is trying to make warriors work by putting like 1,000 points of characters into them.
Yes, that's how warriors work already. What are you talking about?
Not
Chaos Dragons.
Making a unit of Chaos Warriors work by putting 1,000 points of Warriors of Chaos characters there.
I understood what you meant. I was just being facetious.
Yes, I find if you explain the joke, that makes it funnier.
Sorry, how does that...
Yeah.
So, Chieftain Blade, 30 points. Now, if this was 25 points, I'd actually really like it. But it's not, so I don't. Chieftain's Blade, Strength +1, AP 1, Armor Bane 1, magical attacks. Only taken by Wolves of the Sea, Army of Infamy. If you're in a challenge, you get +1 to hit. If you could put this on unit champions, great. You know what all the unit champions in that detachment are capped at? It's 25 points. I don't think there's a single one that gets above that, so... Shame. Too bad, so sad. But, yeah. Taskmaster's Scourge. I actually really like this one. I think this is a legitimately good item. So, this is a 25-point item. Infantry only. In the command subphase of the turn, the wielder may attempt to urge those around him into battle with a lash of their whip. So you take a leadership test using your own leadership test. If you pass until the next start of turn subphase, that character and unit get plus D3 to their movement characteristic. So... capped at 10, you can theoretically get Skin Wolves to movement 10. You have to have the mount, like the character on a monstrous mount, because I don't think there's any monstrous infantry without Unbreakable that can join them, because a Demon Prince can't join them being Unbreakable. I think that's legitimately interesting. And also, Chaos characters typically have okay strength. It's AP 1, extra attacks 1 for 25 points. That's okay.
Yeah, I think I think the demonic mount is already pretty decent. Not that you see it because it's not a dragon, but if you're looking to soup up your Skin Wolves further, at Battle Standard and a War Banner on an Exalted Champion to join them, you can make a unit that's going to be a real pain to deal with.
Yeah, I really like this. I think this is very legitimately interesting. And even if you only put it on something that joins Forsaken, they're Unbreakable.
They're loners, so I don't think you can.
Yeah.
But movement 4 infantry getting plus D3 inches, you'll occasionally be able to get the jump on some cavalry, especially if you've got Warband, for example, to reroll the distances.
Movement 5 Berserkers. Yeah. No, I like it. I think 25 points, this is a magic item I look at and go, oh yeah, but I like it because it's basically an enchanted item that also just happens to have a weapons stat line. That's the rub there. So, interesting one. Moving on, we've got some magic armor. Demonic Plate Mail, 50 points for infantry and cavalry only. Full plate, +1 toughness and initiative.
I think this is actually really good because Exalted Champions and Aspiring Champions currently don't have full plate armor. So if you're looking to get a 2+ armor save, it's currently really hard to do. This kind of solves that problem. This plus barding and a shield is a 2+ armor save, and you get some toughness thrown in. So if you're trying to make a combat battle standard bearer or something like that, this fits in really nicely for me.
That is a solid defensive item. You are correct. It's like the price point for me is off-putting. But when you're putting on a valuable character like a BSB, yeah, I can see it.
The downside being they're not on dragons.
I feel like I've heard that one before. Is that... It's a regular downside. We've also got the Mighty Serpent Scale Mail, 40 points. It is Wolves of the Sea only, and it's heavy armor, and you get strike first.
Yeah.
It's there. Maybe there's some combination. I can't see what it is, but if there is one, let us know, because it's escaped me. If that was full plate as well, I'd be like, maybe, but it's not. So I'm not. Talismans, 45 points. Talisman of the Carrion Crow, regeneration 5+, and poisoned attack special roll.
Yeah.
So I don't take the 40-point regen.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
However, this continues the proud tradition in Arcane Journals of take an already pretty good magic item and make it 5 points more expensive for another great rule. I think
I'm
they
pretty
did
sure
that with Orcs and Goblins.
I'm pretty sure the Orcs and Goblins one was the same price.
Yeah.
I'd have to double check.
Yep. It doesn't fit with an Ogre Blade on a Chaos Lord, but if you want regenerate, adding poison attacks for 5 extra points is pretty good.
So what people are going to say is this lets you get regen on a second character, and to them I say that is true. Build better characters.
If you're not taking regenerate on the first character, you won't have it on the second one.
So if I'm being serious for a second, if you did want to go double Sorcerer Lord on Chariot, this is the one place that I can see it, because they get the inbuilt 5-up ward. You can give them both a 5-up regen as well. You can have 2 legitimate mobile casting platforms.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I could play around with.
I do like that. But I find you because you also want an Infernal Puppet, you probably want some Spell Familiars or Lore Familiars.
Yep.
You can struggle to fit this in, at least on one of them. But if you're trying to outshoot people with Sorcerers on Chariots, you want every save you can find for them, because gunlines will be able to take them out over a few turns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or one if you're unlucky. It happens. It's sad. Talisman of Soaring Eagle. Magic resist 2. In addition, the bearer has a 5-up ward against magical attacks. If you really are scared of magic, if you're Chris and you're a cautious player and you're worried about magic, would you ever take this?
In armies that aren't warriors of chaos, all the time. However, most of the warriors' characters already have a 5+ ward save.
Yeah,
and you can get magic resistance 2 for 20 points for the Brazen Collar.
Hold on now. What characters can you take that don't have that? I mean, there's the Marauder Chieftain has a 6-up. Is that it?
It might be, but I don't want to...
No, I want a firm answer from you, and if you're wrong, we'll flagellate you.
Ooh. Promises get you everywhere. Aspiring Champion might be a 6-up, but I think it's still a 5-up.
Yeah, it's just a 5-up. I think it legitimately is the only character that... So Golrock doesn't have a ward, but also can't buy this. Marauder Chieftain has a 6-up, can buy this, but shouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't really see the point of this one.
Yeah, it's incredibly undercosted for every other army in the game and not super useful for warriors.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's okay. So instead of Magic Resist 2, what if we had Magic Resist 3 and we spent 50 points for a Banner of the Dark Powers and that unit gets Magic Resist 3?
Well, if Magic Resistance can stack, and then you could have a Brazen Collar on the unit champion as well and get up to Magic Resistance 5.
Unfortunately, you can't. So
that's a shame. I lose track of which ones you can and can't.
That's fair. I thought you were doing a bit.
I wish I was, and instead I'm just forgetful and incompetent. But look, Magic Resistance 3, again, if your unit champion can get Magic Resistance 2 for 20 points, I think you're just kind of always doing that before you do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because it's so cheap. Is the Collar of Clawn
extremely common?
Yeah, so you just take, I don't see a lot of point for this. That's fair. Banner of the Baying Hound, 25 points. It's Heralds of Darkness only, and this is the main reason I think you might go for that army, because it gives Vanguard. It's the Pegasus Knight banner, but on a unit that isn't Pegasus Knights.
Yeah. However, same sort of thing with the Nomadic War. Getting Vanguard on some cavalry units can be really nice.
Yeah.
Vanguard on Chosen Knights in drilled formation gets them a long way around the corner before your opponent has a turn, potentially. I think it's good. I'd take it a lot if I was taking the Heralds list, but I'm not super likely to take the Heralds list.
Yeah, I found that when I was writing my list, it didn't make the cut because you can't get the turn 1 charge because your threat range is only 16 inches. Move 7 +3 for Swift Stride +6 for the charge roll, and you've got no way to extend that like you do in Orcs and Goblins with the War spell that gives you plus D3 inch. So, yeah, I think this is fine, and as you say, you can get aggressively pushed forwards, and then you can drilled and get around. But that's a very expensive unit to be pushing forwards before you know if you're going first. So that concerns me a little bit. Then we have got the Sea Raiders crest, 25 points as well. Wolves of Infamy, Wolves of the Sea Army only. They gain fear if they already had fear against terror. This is here.
It is.
You know where this might actually be good if we get into a game. We get to a point in the game where we take bricks of infantry because you can take fairly solid bricks of infantry that are T4 with an OK save. And then maybe I'm interested in taking this here with a BSB. Yeah, maybe there's something there. But right now I'm not super excited about that. Icon of Darkness, 20 points. An enemy model that targets this unit in the shooting phase takes an additional -1 to hit. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of ballistic skill shooting, but I like that.
Yeah, I maybe seen a little bit more in recent times, but I think it's quite good. And for 20 points, I would.
It's so undercosted.
Yeah, if you've got a big the right unit to carry it, like the Chosen Knights, who could also be having Vanguard, and you're only allowed one unit of Chosen Knights, so can't have both. But yeah, I like it a lot, but I don't know if you'll always have a unit to put it on.
Yeah, I like it. I didn't manage to fit into my list, and I was really upset about that because there's also the Dark Power, I think they're called, from the main book, which gives you -1 to be hit in the shooting phase as well. So you could give one unit -2 to be hit, or you can give 2 units -1 to be hit by ballistic skill shooting, which I like more. But yeah. You can also put it on skirmishes, potentially. If you had a skirmishing unit, you can get up to -2 to hit. That can be quite powerful for avoiding the incidental firepower that deals with skirmishes quite well. Onto the best page of the magic items. This is where it gets real. So we're going to start off with the Bloodskull Pendant, which is not where it gets real, but it is still it's kind of cool. 45 points is too steep for it, but I like the rules. Infantry only, so you can't do it on a massive base, which is a shame. But you can put it on a Demon Prince, which is a pretty big base. Instead of attacking normally, you may choose to inflict a single strength 8 hit on every enemy model in base contact with it at AP1. They have Killing Blow. It's not even one use only.
Yeah, I think given how rolling to hit with 4 attacks or so, I think this is doing more damage for the most part than putting a great weapon on your combat character. I like it a lot. If you want to spend 45 points on a combat upgrade to an infantry character, and I think that's where it falls down. Is that what it does isn't a thing that you might be looking to do, but it does it very well and very evocatively.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, you're only ever going to hit 4 models with a Demon Prince, so it's not even that exciting there. I tell you what is exciting. Rod of the Damned, 40 points. We heard you like Ruby Ring of Ruin, so we gave you Ruby Ring of Ruin at home. It's 10 points more, and it's a worse magic missile. Well, it's worse in some ways, better in some ways. The Rod of the Damned, the bearer of the Rod of the Damned, may cast the summoning spell from the Law of Demonology as a bound spell with a power level of 2. So that is 18-inch range, strength 4, AP 1, 2d6 hits. Very similar to, Fireball, slightly less range, a little bit of AP, but you can take both. And that is good.
To use one of your favorite phrases, this is not okay. Why would you take the one army in the game that can spam magic missiles as a signature spell or across loads of wizards and give them more? I don't think this item is doing it's not doing any good, and it's going to do a lot of evil, and I might be the one doing it.
Oh, I'm so excited to do evil with this. I think the first battle report I put up on this channel was a Chaos Sorcerer list that I played against. I was playing the Ogres, but I had written the list with my mate, and we just went, how many magic missiles can we fit in? Turns out it's a lot, and now it's more.
Yes. However, the slight downside is that when you want a Skull of Catan, an Infernal Puppet, Lore Familiars, Spell Familiars, a Ruby Ring, and a Rod of the Damned, you do need to take more wizards to carry all of these things.
I think you can fit this on a Chosen. Can Chosen take 50 points of magic items?
I don't think so, but if you can.
Yeah, I feel like there's at least one unit that can take 50 points of magic items. I'll have to double check that one. But there's some sneaky way to fit it in. We're chaos. We're bastards. We do unfair things, like take these additional magic missiles outside of our character allowance.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a wizard character either. If you've got a battle standard bearer who's just there for the reroll,
That's true,
or
yeah.
a demon prince with 40 spare points, which I think does come up a bit with the demon prince.
True.
Good place to pop one of these.
Yeah, I like it. And a winged demon prince with an additional magic missile. You can have 3 magic missiles on him. That's just...
And a pillar of fire just while we're there.
Oh, yeah, of course. And arcane urgency. So you're definitely getting there. Demon Forge Barding, 35 points. Cavalry, Heralds of Darkness only. On the turn they charge, the mount and all mounts in the unit they have joined gain +1 to their attacks characteristics. How do you feel about this?
Does it count as barding and give you an additional point of armor save?
Because
the answer is no, I don't like it very much.
Yeah.
The answer is yes, I don't like it very much, but more interested.
So what the counter argument here, which I don't agree with necessarily, it's right, but I don't like it, is that it's kind of like a war banner, because you're probably getting +1 combat res out of it, but also you're theoretically killing a couple of models from it. Because you're getting an additional 6 or 7 strength 4 AP 0 armor bane 1 attacks. That's something. It's 35 points though. I don't like that.
Yeah, so it's a war banner. If it was a war banner, it would only be when they charge. And I don't think I think a lot of the time you don't actually do a wound with those attacks. Sometimes you'll do 2 or 3. But
Hold on now. We all know Chaos Steeds are the number one source of output in a Chaos army. I'm not even joking. Like my knights do way less than their mounts all of the time.
Mine mostly hide from a dragon behind a hill or a building and pretend that they're actually going to take part in the game.
That is a better use for them. Yes, no, that's correct. All right, well, we don't have to argue about this one because we can instead argue about arcane items. Scepter of Power, 55 points. +1 to any of your casting or dispel rolls on that model. However, if they roll any natural double, the bearer suffers a strength 10 hit at AP 3 after you've finished the casting the spell or dispelling. How do you feel about that?
I think when you've already got a puppet for defense and a Skull of Catan for getting +1 to cast, this probably is not going to fit in very often, with the slight caveat that you could have a Demon Prince with this and triple stacked saves, so the hit isn't going to do too much damage.
With that Demon Armor 4-up.
Yep. And it could be standing within 3 inches of the Skull of Catan. So now you can get your Demon Prince up to +6 to cast, and the level 4 in the unit of Tzeentch can have +6 to cast. Yep. So it's got a roll, but I think for the points, it's probably not high on the list of arcane items for me.
Curses, we agree on this one. Shame. The strength 10 hit at AP3 is much less of a downside than it seems, because you just ignore it a third of the time, because you've got an inbuilt 5-up ward. And that's before you start getting spicy with your magic items.
Yes. Or the Demon Prince with a 4-up ward and regen 5. Oh, this probably counts as magic, so yeah.
I would say so, yeah. It's not clear, but I would say so. I think I would probably, if I'm going to take it, it's if I'm doing a double sorcerer on chariot build. I probably don't take the skull in that, because I probably end up being a little more spread out and I've got less characters to be buffed by it, and getting the +1 to dispel is nice. So I think I like this more, but it's niche, I think. And it's 5 points less, so I get a favour of the gods as well if I want to go down that route. Grimoire of Ogvold, 50 points. Rather than randomly generating the spells they know, and regardless of their level of wizardry, the bearer knows all 7 spells from their chosen lore of magic. However, they can only cast a number of spells equal to their level of wizardry per turn. Now, have you noticed something that's weird about this?
Go on.
Well, because you're not generating your spells randomly, I don't think you can swap to your signature spell from your lore, your lore of chaos, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, it's also 20 points more than a lore familiar, which
But
gets a,
sometimes I want all 7 because there's at least no laws in the game that have 7 good spells.
sometimes you have 2 level 4s on battle magic and only one can take a lore familiar.
Yeah, the other one probably just takes a spell familiar, which
Yeah, there
is
seems to be quite a few of these items that other armies would love more than the warriors
yeah,
maybe need.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Cool, we can move on. Tome of the Dark Gods, 35 points. Chaos Undivided only. They can discard any number of their randomly generated spells. For each spell they discard, they may select any spell from the lore of Chaos as if they had the corresponding mark of Chaos. Now, something that's interesting here is it's not 35 points, it's 25 points because you're not taking a lore of Chaos as well. So that's kind of interesting because you can go Demonology, you can swap into the Magic Missile, and then you can use this to discard one of your spells and swap into a Lure of Siege, Pink Fire, Blue Fire, one of the fires.
Yeah, I kind of like this. And it's a design space that they used a bit more in 8th, which was to do a little bit more with signature spells and characters being able to sort of opt into more of those or more reliably than some of the bigger spells. I like it. I don't know how much I like it. I'd need to play with it, I think, to get a sense of how good this is rather than just rolling for spells or having a spell familiar.
Yeah. So the Slanesh spell is a hex that gives fights last, I think, if I remember correctly. So, like, I could see a world where genuinely, I could take a lore familiar, a spell familiar. I can take Demonology. I randomly roll my spells. I get the ones I want. I swap into the Magic Missile there. I take Pink Fire, and also I take either the Toughness buff for Nurgle if I'm feeling funny, or the Strikes Last for Slanesh if I'm feeling like I want to win games. I I think there's some scope for it. I like it.
Yeah, I think this of all the magic items, this might be the one that I have the least well-formed opinion of at this point in time, and look forward to playing with the most.
I respect that answer. That's a good answer. It's always
terrible, and it's the best thing ever, and it's awful.
I wasn't even joking. I really do like that answer. I appreciate it when someone can admit that they don't actually have a firm opinion on it.
You're welcome.
So we are going to talk about 2 lists. We're going to wrap this one up in under 2 hours, I promise. So we've both written a list. We decided to take one each. Chris went with the Marauders, which I was pleased to see because it's the more exciting one, and I wanted to see sort of what wild and wacky direction he took it. And it's not the direction I'd have gone, so I'm glad that he did. And I went for the Chaos Knights detachments. Do you want to give us a bit of on-ramp to what this list is trying to achieve, and then give us a run-through of it as well?
Yeah. So I tried to put together what was something like what the people who wrote the Marauder Seawolves list probably hope the Marauder Seawolves list looks like. What it could look like is a couple of dragons and a unit champion trying to grab first turn and fling those dragons at people. And that's probably, all things considered, better than this.
Sorry, just to stop, you said a couple of dragons. It could be 3 dragons.
Can you get the Warpfire dragon in the...
you know what? Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I was just 2 dragons and 2 giant warp spawn of Nurgle.
I think that's better.
So I think there are better things you can do with the list than this, but this is me trying to lean into the Marauder ambushy Seawolves feel in a way that hopefully is still moderately competitive. So we kick off with a Sorcerer Lord on level 4. You need one. You have to dispel spells. So you've got the Infernal Puppet because you have to dispel spells. And I've put him on a Chariot because we are not going to have any mage bunkers in this list. We are leaning into full MSU, as many playing pieces as we can have. Sacrifice 1 unit to set up flank charges for the others. Spell Familiar, Ruby Ring, Favor of the Gods, just to round out generically good item package. On a Chaos Chariot, I think Ed was talking about this earlier. Chaos Chariots and Sorcerer Lords are a really nice match. I've been experimenting with that. It's great. Then in core, we have new units. Hooray, excitement. 4 units of 5 Berserkers with Flails and Ambush. 2 units of 8 Berserkers with Flails. And then 2 units of 6 Marauders with Flails and the Mark of Khorne, being mini Berserkers, but square-based comp packs tend to only let you have 6 units of the same thing. So we're diversifying here. The idea is that you have loads of units with strength 5 and AP 2 and lots of attacks. None of them are worth more than 50 or 60 points. And so you are giving up very few points when people charge them. And when you flank charge them and front charge them in response, you threaten to do a lot of damage very quickly. Hard to set up, not very good against dragons if you're in a dragon meta, but if you're in a shooting meta, having loads of cheap ambushes and units that aren't worth many points, a really good way to pressure the shooting armies. It's all going to arrive at the same time, and they have to shoot a lot of different things to actually pick up points off you. Then we have some Warhounds, which are great and cheap. A couple of units of Huskarls with Drilled. We talked about these earlier as a good medium cavalry unit, and again, they're getting there very quickly. Possible that you want to put Mark of Corn and Flails on these instead to hit harder. I don't know. I'd need to play more games with the unit to get a sense of how to balance the Frenzy in the list. Because Frenzy on an infantry unit can only get baited into charging from a short distance away, whereas Frenzied Cavalry can get baited into charging from a very long way away. And you don't want to accidentally charge a dragon. We've then got Skin Wolves, a unit we both think are really good. A 3 and 2 units of 2, because we're trying to have lots and lots of small units. But given the way the abilities work, this could easily be better as larger units. A 4 and a 3, find some points for 2 units of 4 maybe. But again, the idea is to just have lots of units that can charge things after they've killed one of your existing units, and having Swift Stride, Movement 7, and Skirmishes, Skin Wolves can charge loads of things. 3 individual Dragon Ogres, they're great. I think they're extremely good for their points. And Immune to Psychology is quite nice. A lot of things in the list have Frenzy, but also can cause panic if something dies. So Dragon Ogre's Immune to Psych is good. Giant Spawn, Unbreakable, even better. 2 of them. Spawn of Nurgle. A real anvil in the list. Everything else, if it gets charged, falls over extremely quickly. It's very nice to be able to just put a spawn in somewhere and say, look, this is where you'll be next turn, and you can set up your counter charges appropriately. There's something like 19 units, 15 deployments. You will get to see everything your opponent is doing before you have to deploy most of your wolves and the spawn and the sorcerer lord. Flood the board and make it really difficult for your opponent to get big points off you, and threaten to take quite a few back off them, because your units hit a lot harder than they should for 50 or 60 points when that's all you're spending on them.
Yeah, I really like it. I think if I was doing a similar list, the only thing I'd do is I'd put some Marauder Horsemen with Mark of Corn in. But as you said, if they've got Frenzy and they're mounted, they are a lot easier to bait. You just go, screw it, it was 84 points. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, no, I can absolutely see the justification for not doing so. This is going to give shooting armies a real headache. Like, oh, what do we target? Well, probably the caster. But then if we kill the caster, which is going to take some chewing through, we don't kill the giant spawn. So we should probably kill the giant spawn. And then, those individual dragon ogres are really annoying. And those skin wolves have managed to get into our lines really quickly. Yeah, I like this. I think it's really solid.
And something else you can do as well with shooting armies, especially when you have lots of units you don't really care about too much, is just hide the Sorcerer Lord behind terrain and bring it out after a couple of turns and you've started to get into their lines. You don't need to rush, I think, which is a lesson I'm increasingly learning with Old World. You can get your points in turns 5 and 6 as long as you get them. And if you rush in too quickly and give up those points early, that makes that job a lot harder. So I think, against shooting armies, I'd be inclined to put all the Berserkers in ambush and bring the Sorcerer Lord out in the later turns. You also don't have to ambush with the Berserkers with ambush, and that just gives you more deployments and more playing pieces when your opponent also has an all-combat army and is going to be coming to get you.
Yeah, and also other than over half the units in the army, you can Steed of Shadows with your Demonology caster.
Yes.
That's pretty nice.
Skirmishy Steed of Shadows Berserkers with flails getting behind people on turn 1 is everything I'm here for.
Yeah, also skin wolves. Maybe that's too much commitment, and they'll go, "Oh, I'm actually going to turn around now because there's something that's worth turning around for." But 8 berserkers, you're like, do I really have to deal with this unit? Like, I do, but I don't want to. It's really bad for me that I have to deal with this unit.
But if you're turning around for skin wolves, they can just run out of your arcs really easily, especially if they pass a march test. You're just, unless you're peg knights, you're not catching them, which is another thing this list does not really want to play against is Pegasus Knights because they don't have flank, they don't expose flanks.
I that's okay. I think as a weakness for the army, being bad against Pegasus Knights, that's Warhammer. So we're not too worried about that one. Yeah, great stuff. It's a really nice thematic list. You've gone in a fun direction with it. I really like that. I've written a list, and again, so similar to what Chris has done, I haven't gone for like the most competitive list where I'd squeeze dragons in because I don't think that is how you build this list. And also, I think this list has real issues. So I was like, I like the Marauders and the Chaos Knights with a Mark of Khorne. It makes them punchier than you think they should be. They slap pretty hard. Yes, they're going to be frenzy and they could be frenzy baited. But what does that look like if I just give everything the Mark of Khorne? So there's 2 units in here with a mark that isn't Mark of Khorne, and that's the Sorcerer Lord and the Chosen Chaos Knights. So we'll come back to those. We'll talk about everything else first. I'm going to have 3 aspiring champions. Now, this is a unit you might have forgotten existed, but you can take them, and in this detachment, you can put them on chosen chariots, which I quite like. They're, gets them up to, as mentioned, 6 wounds, T5, 3 up save, 5 up ward. That, without spending any additional points, that is good. That's 210 points base. I've given them lancers. No, I've given them great weapons because you don't need to use your shield because you've already got a 3 up save, so it's just a great spot to be in. Mark of Khorne, because that unlocks the Mark of Khorne in the rest of the units. Chosen Chariot, as mentioned before. So you just got to push them forwards alongside the rest of your army. Then there's an aspiring champion on a Chaos Steed, Mark of Khorne, Lance Shield, Diabolic Splendor. Diabolic Splendor is the -1 to be shot, and this is going in probably in the Chaos Knights, but if you feel like you need protection against ballistic skill shooting, you can put it in the Chosen. Oh, no, you can't, because the mark.
The mark.
It just goes in the Chaos Knights. Yeah. That's where I intended it to go. The Chaos Knights, they are full command, Banner of Rage, which gives them frenzy that can't be lost, Lances and Shield. The reason for this, 35 points for frenzy, is because I'm taking 3 units of Marauder Horsemen with Mark of Khorne, and that caps out my characters with Mark of Khorne already. I've basically got 3 units of Marauder Horsemen. There's 7 there. I didn't write it on, but 3 units of 7 Marauder Horsemen, Flail Shield, Mark of Khorne. Each one's got 2 attack, strength 5, AP2 on the charge. Really solid. Can be skirmish if I want to, if I really want to get frenzy baited. And then I've got the unit of 7 again. 2 attacks each, strengths 6, AP2, all that good stuff. There's also 2 units of Chaos Warhounds with Vanguard for 5 points. I love Vanguard. There's also a 3rd unit of Warhounds. I didn't have the 5 points for Vanguard here. Cheap chaff, these are your screens for your frenzied units if you want to try and control them at all, or you can just pen your opponent in. They're very versatile. They're cheap. Just take Warhounds if you're playing Chaos. And then we've got the 2 things that aren't Khorne, which is the Sorcerer Lord, level 4 Demonology, Chaos Steed, Mark and Ernagle, Infernal Puppet, because it's really good, Spell Familiar for that 5th spell, because you can't take Infernal Puppet in a Lore Familiar, Enchanting Aura. This is an aura of turns off strike first for any enemy models in base contact. I think it's 1 unit in base contact. And also, if they don't have strikes first, they get strikes last. He goes with the 7 Chosen Knights of, it says Khorne, it's meant to be Nurgle. I could fix that in post, but I'm not going to. Full command blasted standard, so they reroll 1s for armor saves in the shooting phase. So it gives them that 2 up save, rerolling 1s. They're not just going to fall over to longbows, which is really sad. Full plate Lancer Shields, getting them up to a 2 up save. They've got drilled, and they've got the Mark of Nurgle. So this unit is going to theoretically just sweep your entire opponent's army. Everything else takes the attention. You've got 4 units of cavalry that hit really hard and go quite fast. You've got 2 chariots, and that's all just going turn 1 full send. And then on one of the flanks, you've got the Sorcerer Lord, ideally the flank where your opponent's going to put their wizard, so you can shut that down. And you just sort of angle them around, and then turn 2 or 3, you get a charge into your opponent. And you've cast the Demonic Vigor, so each Chosen Knight is, 3 attacks, strength 7, AP3. So you just crush a flank. and then you crush another unit, and then you crush another unit, and that is the game plan. And I didn't want to make them Khorne, despite everything else being Khorne, because that is too expensive a unit to risk. But yeah, I think if I wanted to play full violence, this is probably the full violence. And again, it would be better if I just put dragons in.
I really like the aspiring champions on chariots, getting the extra, like getting the ward save and a few extra attacks. And once you've got the Mark of Khorne, it's more than a few extra attacks. I really like.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Mark of Khorne doesn't transfer to the chariot. I didn't have points to give them Mark of Khorne as well, which is sad.
I'd need to...
because you could specifically buy it as an upgrade for the chariot, so I don't think it applies, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't... Are you allowed to take a chariot that has a different mark to its rider?
So you can... a marked character can join a unit that has the same mark or no mark. That's the wording, so it should be okay.
Okay, because I'm... annoyingly paying 10... Well, I have been paying 10 points for my Cinch Sorcerer Lord's chariot, and if I don't have to, I would like to not.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, as you say, the amount of damage output you get for a couple of 100 points on one of those is really nice. I also am a big fan of the Banner of Rage on Knights. I'm actually really tempted to try it on Chosen Knights, because with Stubborn, you can happily lose a combat, fall back in good order, but keep your frenzy going. Maybe that's a bit too much, but
it's spicy.
I do also like the plan of having just so many frenzy things. They can't frenzy bait them all. And if they do, they can't afford to capitalize on that, because you're holding this giant unit of Chosen Knights in the holster. And anything that exposes itself to go after your the Khorne chariots or the other unit of knights is going to be copping Chosen Knights. And that is going to be good night.
Yeah. It took me a moment. Something that I didn't touch on, just to take us back to Warhammer and away from your terrible puns. The drilled unit with the Sorcerer Lord, there is a spell in the Lord, spell number 6, we've mentioned before. I still don't know what the name of it is. Gives you +1 movement, toughness, and initiative for your turn only. You can get up to movement 8, which drilled means that you can move 24 inches. So turn 1, you can just go, oh, I'm touching your deployment zone. And I've angled in a way that I probably charge you turn 2. And if you want to deal with me and my 2-up save rerolling 1s, you can do that. But then I will charge you with everything else. Too bad, so sad. I think there's a lot of play to that.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of list that if people are playing normal, sensible Warhammer armies, will have a great time engaging with it. And the only downside, again, is that if someone puts down 3 dragons against you, that can be difficult. But I really like the plan and the way that it's set up to force your opponent into just having only bad options.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of lists that you can do that to pretty effectively with this.
Yeah, and it's a great way to win games of Warhammer, just making your opponent have no good choices, that reduce their choices, win some games. I like it.
This will be so much more fun to get 20-0 by than 3 dragons as well.
Oh, hell yeah. Like, you're going to be like, man, I didn't realize how good Mark of Khorne cavalry were. And you're like, they're not. The next time you play me, you're going to beat me hard. Perfect. So this has been a long and rambling but fairly in-depth wrap-up of the Arcane Journal. Huge thanks to Chris for coming on. As a reminder, he is from The Dwellers Below, The Dwellers Below, The Dwellers Below, and that is in the description box below, description box below, description box below. Any plugs? You're welcome to plug your own stuff despite me having done it. Any plugs you want to make?
Just The Dwellers Below. The Dwellers Below is a podcast starring The Dwellers Below, and you can find it on the Dwellers Below YouTube channel.
Fantastic. And now, when will you be next releasing an episode? Because you don't do it often enough, and I enjoy listening to
you. We have one that is in the can, as they say. Should be coming out fairly soon, but you may well beat us to the punch with this one. So either you've just enjoyed an episode of The Dwellers Below, or keep your eyes open for one. I have no idea which. We are Agents of Chaos, probably fitting given the content today.
I will say, every time I ask you when you've got an episode coming, you and Dave have both been like, oh, we've got one coming, so I just need to nag you more. I think that's the answer. So, to round us out, on 3, 1, 2, 3, The Dwellers Below.
Fail your strength test.
Huge thanks, as always, to my Grail Knight tier supporters. That is Morpheus Gaming, Mechanite, and most recently, Creekhammer. Thank you as well to everyone else who's popping up on the screen right now. If you like what I do, you too can become a supporter of the channel, becoming a member down below. Or if not, you can like the videos, share, watch. All of these things really have helped me grow the channel and will continue to help me expand over the next few months. There's a growing close order Discord linked down below. That's not a members only Discord. There are members only VIP areas, but it is something that you're more than welcome to join. We are starting to grow a great community there. It's quite active. Lots of great hobby going on down below as well. If you haven't subscribed, there'll be a link to subscribe on your screen over here, and there'll be another video to watch if you want to over there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.